Ludlum's Cave, also known as Mother Ludlum's Hole, is a small cave in the sandstone cliff of the Waverley at Moor Park, near Farnham, Surrey, in England. The cave is the subject of a number of local legends. The legend of Mother Ludlum, the White Witch of Waverley. The cave has long been associated with the legend of Mother Ludlum, who was, supposedly, a white witch who lived in the cave. The earliest versions of the legend, such as that recorded by John Aubrey in 1673 in his Natural History and Antiquities of Surrey, make no mention of a witch, and it is likely that the story was originally associated with fairy. Various versions of the legend have existed. The simplest version is that Mother Ludlum would loan utensils, and that a large cauldron was borrowed but not returned. She became enraged, and the borrower, scared by her anger, sought refuge in Frensham Church. The cauldron associated with this legend remains in the church to this day. It is believed by historians to have been used for brewing church ale in past times. Made of hammered copper and measuring 3 feet in diameter and 19 inches deep, it is of the type that was commonly used in the Middle Ages for catering at parishioners' weddings and religious festivals. As recorded in 1937, the legend is that one day the devil, in disguise, had visited Mother Ludlum and asked to borrow the cauldron she used for mixing her potions. Recognising the devil from his hoof prints in the sand, she refused, so the devil stole the cauldron with the witch in pursuit. Making great leaps, the devil created a series of hills where he touched the ground, these now being the sandstone hills near Churt, known as the Devil's Jumps. The devil dropped the cauldron, or kettle, on the last of these hills, Kettlebury or Kettlebury Hill. Mother Ludlum recovered the cauldron and placed it in Frensham Church, where it would be safe from the devil. Another version, recorded in the 1920s, is that the cauldron could be borrowed by climbing the highest of the Devil's Jumps, known as Stony Jump, and whispering to the fairies who lived there through a hole in the rocky outcrop on the summit. A borrower failed to return it one time, so the fairies condemned the borrower to have the cauldron follow him wherever he went. Distressed by the presence of his pursuer, he sought sanctuary in Frensham Church, where he collapsed and died, leaving the cauldron trapped inside. And now, a story based around the legend of Mother Ludlum. The campfire burned low beneath the trees, its strange glow barely holding back the darkness of the forest. Nobody spoke much anymore. The woods around them were too quiet for that. An older man sat closest to the flames, staring into them like he could see something far beyond the firelight. Finally he cleared his throat. "You ever hear of Mother Ludlum?" A few people shook their heads. He nodded slowly. "Most haven't, but people around Surrey still whisper about her, especially near Frensham and the Devil's Punch Bowl." The wind moved softly through the branches overhead. They said she lived alone in a cave, hidden deep in the woods. Some called her a witch, others said she was something older than that. He poked the fire with a stick, but she helped people. If a farmer lost livestock, she'd help find them. If a child got sick, she'd leave herbs at the family's doorstep before sunrise. During harsh winters, hungry families would somehow wake to find bread or firewood waiting outside. He looked around the fire carefully. outside her cave sat a flat stone. If someone stood on it at midnight and politely asked for help, she would hear them. A branch cracked somewhere deep in the woods. Nobody turned around. The strange thing was, the old man continued, whatever you borrowed always appeared by morning. Food, tools, blankets, even money sometimes. But there was one rule. His face darkened slightly. Turned it before the second sunrise. The fire hissed. For years everyone obeyed, until a man named Black Tom came to the cave. The storyteller paused as the wind picked up. Tom was greedy, mean, the sort of man who smiled while cheating you. One freezing winter night, he climbed the hill to Mother Ludlum's cave, carrying a lantern and an empty sack. He asked to borrow her great iron cauldron. Someone near the fire frowned. What for? He claimed his children were starving, the old man replied quietly. Said he needed to make stew. Flames danced across his face. By dawn, the cauldron was sitting in his cottage. But Tom lied. He used it to brew ale instead. He sold drink to nearby villages and made more money in a month than he'd earned in years. The old man looked into the darkness beyond the firelight. The second sunrise came. He didn't return the cauldron. The woods seemed even quieter now. At first, nothing happened. Then, strange things started. His horses refused to enter the barn. Dogs barked at empty corners. Milk turned sour overnight. And every evening, just after sunset, knock, knock, knock. And tapped the side of his chair 3 times. A slow knock came at Tom's front door. He'd open it, and nobody would be there. Someone laughed nervously. The old man ignored them. On the 3rd night, the knocking changed. Knock, knock, knock. Louder, angrier. Tom opened the door holding a lantern and standing at the far end of the field. The storyteller lowered his voice. It was a woman dressed completely in black. Her hair dragged across the ground. Her face looked pale as bone, and in one hand he saw a long iron chain. Nobody around the fire spoke now. Tom slammed the door and locked every window in the cottage, but the knocking continued. Knock, knock, knock. Only now it wasn't coming from outside. The old man glanced down slowly. It was coming from beneath the floorboards. Several people shifted uneasily. Tom stayed awake all night listening to it move underneath him, dragging, scraping, circling beneath the house, and just before dawn, paused. The voice came, quiet, cold, almost gentle. Return what you borrowed. The fire crackled loudly, making several people jump. The next morning, Tom finally loaded the cauldron onto a cart and rode toward the cave. But the woods felt wrong. No birds, no wind, no sound except the wheels creaking through the trees, and the deeper he went, the darker it became. The old man leaned closer to the fire. When he finally reached the cave, Mother Ludlum was waiting outside. She stood perfectly still beside the stone. The chain hung from one hand, and her eyes, he swallowed, were completely white. Tom begged forgiveness, tried to explain, tried to blame hunger. But Mother Ludlum said nothing. She only pointed toward the cave. So Tom dragged the cauldron inside, and he stepped into the darkness. The storyteller stopped. For several seconds only the fire could be heard. "What happened to him?" someone whispered. The old man looked up slowly. "Nobody knows, but his horse returned alone 3 days later, and people who walked near Mother Ludlum's cave at night still report hearing sounds beneath the ground. Knock, knock, knock." A cold gust swept through the trees, strong enough to shake the branches overhead.